This deals with pages 249 to 257. This completes the terms for the book. I asked, in regard to Aryeh Kaplan's commentary on the Sefer Yetzirah, feel free to discuss this in terms of other Kabbalistic texts. Don't make up fanciful, verbose answers. Please take the following textual material. Extract all of the Hebrew/Kabbalistic terms and define them. And, not just Hebrew/Kabbalistic terms, if there is a concept the author is presenting, please define that too. However, please don't redefine the basic 10 Sephirot, just define the Kabbalistic terms beyond that. If you can look back at all of my previous conversations with you, please don't duplicate definitions of terms. Take all of the mentioned biblical quotes, search and provide the KJV quotes and provide a brief contextual explanation of each of the quotes, 2 or 3 sentences. If Talmudic/Zoharic or other Kabbalistic quotes are referenced, please go ahead and find those quotes also. Here are the responses. New Hebrew/Kabbalistic terms and concepts. Celestial treasuries, Atzarot Elyonim. A common rabbinic and Kabbalistic metaphor describing the higher spiritual realms as storehouses of divine wisdom, blessing, and spiritual reward. Rather than physical locations, these treasuries represent successive levels of concealed divine influence. In later Kabbalah they become associated with the storehouses through which divine abundance, Shephat, descends into creation. The Zohar frequently speaks of opening the upper treasuries as the revelation of hidden wisdom. Infinite light, or Ein Sof. Although you've encountered Ein Sof previously, Kaplan is emphasizing a particular doctrine here. Or Ein Sof is the infinite divine illumination prior to all limitation. The worlds exist as successive filters or garments, levishim, through which finite beings can receive this light without ceasing to exist. This doctrine is central in Lurianic Kabbalah, Pardes Rimonim, Etz Chaim, Radiance of the Divine Presence. Hebrew, Ziv HaShekinah. Literally, the radiance of the Shekinah. This expression refers to the spiritual delight experienced by the righteous in the world to come. The Talmud famously says, "The righteous sit with their crowns upon their heads and enjoy the radiance of the Shekinah." This is not seeing God's essence but receiving an intellectual spiritual illumination proceeding from His presence. Light of perception. Kaplan is presenting an important mystical concept. The primordial light, or Haganah's, hidden light, was not physical illumination. Rather, it represented perfect perception, unrestricted spiritual awareness, prophetic vision, direct apprehension of divine reality. The hidden light is often identified in Kabbalah with the first manifestation of divine wisdom, binding oneself to good. Kaplan summarizes an important doctrine. Reward is not external compensation. Rather, one becomes like that to which one attaches himself. This comes directly from medieval Jewish philosophy and Kabbalah. Compare. A person cleaves to what he loves. This resembles the concept of Divakut. Although Kaplan does not explicitly use the word here. Vision of God. The text carefully distinguishes between seeing God Himself versus perceiving divine revelation. Distinction appears throughout Jewish philosophy. According to both the Rambam and Kabbalah, God's essence remains unknowable. Only His manifestations, Giluyim, can be perceived. Future world. Kaplan is emphasizing the experiential aspect, rather than merely surviving after death. The future world is presented as direct spiritual perception, perfect knowledge, complete attachment to God, endless intellectual delight. This follows both Rambam, Hilchot Teshuvah 8, and Classical Kabbalah 3 opposite 3. This expression appears throughout Sefer Yetzirah. Kaplan interprets it structurally rather than merely symbolically. The pattern is right, left, middle, which produces balance, judgment, harmony. It is essentially the archetype underlying many later Kabbalistic triads: thesis, antithesis, synthesis. Although this terminology is modern, Kaplan uses it as an analogy. The Sefer Yetzirah teaches that every polarity requires right, left, mediator. Later Kabbalah expresses this as Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet. Kaplan is not suggesting historical dependence on Hegel, only illustrating the logical structure. Truncated triangle. This is Kaplan's geometric model. He argues that the numerical progression 3, 7, 12 can be represented by increasingly complex truncated triangles. This is not found explicitly in classical Kabbalah but is Kaplan's mathematical visualization of patterns implied in Sefer Yetzirah. Truncated pyramid. Likewise, Kaplan's truncated pyramid demonstrates how 3 placed upon 7 produces 10. And then this visually connects 3 mothers, 7 doubles, 12 simples, 10 sephirot, 22 Hebrew letters. Again, this is Kaplan's pedagogical model rather than an ancient diagram. Advocate and accuser. Hebrew ideas. Sanagor and Categor. These represent opposing spiritual forces. The advocate argues in favor. The accuser exposes fault. The middle point represents divine judgment balancing both. This imagery is common in the Talmud and later Kabbalah. 3 love/3 hate. Kaplan interprets these as symbolic polarities. Love represents union, harmony, integration. Hate represents separation, fragmentation, opposition. The geometry illustrates spiritual relationships rather than emotions alone. 3 give life/3 kill. These correspond to creative and destructive forces operating within creation. Many Kabbalists connect these with mercy versus judgment. Although Sefer Yetzirah itself leaves the symbolism deliberately concise. 1 is the rule. The 1 is deliberately not counted. It represents the absolute unity above every numerical manifestation. This is consistent with Sefer Yetzirah's repeated distinction between the 1 and the numbered emanations. Mathematical formula. Kaplan gives 6 n plus 1, n plus 8. This is his own observation. It generates the point totals found in his geometric construction. It is not a traditional Kabbalistic formula but a modern mathematical insight. Biblical passages. Song of Songs 1:4. Draw me, we will run after thee, the king hath brought me into his chambers, we will be glad and rejoice in thee, we will remember thy love more than wine, the upright love thee. Context. The verse belongs to the opening dialogue between the bride and the beloved. Rabbinic interpretation understands the bride as Israel and the king as God. Kaplan follows the Midrashic reading that the king's chambers symbolize entry into the higher spiritual realms and the divine treasuries. Rabbinic source. The allusion is to Shir HaShirim Rabbah 1:4, where the chambers are interpreted as God's heavenly chambers and hidden storehouses of wisdom. Job 33:30. To bring back his soul from the pit, to be enlightened with the light of the living. Context. These are the words of Elihu, who argues that suffering can serve as God's means of correcting and restoring a person. Kaplan applies the phrase light of the living to the mystical illumination of divine perception. Proverbs 16:15. In the light of the king's countenance is life, and his favor is as a cloud of the latter rain. Context. Solomon teaches that the favor of a righteous king brings life and blessing. Kabbalistically, the king's face becomes an image of divine illumination, and Kaplan associates this with eternal spiritual life. Psalm 17:15. As for me, I will behold thy face in righteousness, I shall be satisfied, when I awake, with thy likeness. Context. David contrasts the temporary prosperity of the wicked with his hope of ultimate communion with God. Rabbinic tradition interprets when I awake as awakening in the world to come, where the righteous enjoy the vision of the divine presence. Talmudic parallel. Birakhot 1:7a. In the world to come there is neither eating nor drinking, the righteous sit with their crowns upon their heads and enjoy the radiance of the Shekinah. This is the principal rabbinic source underlying Kaplan's discussion. Psalm 16:11. Thou wilt shew me the path of life, in thy presence is fullness of joy, at thy right hand there are pleasures forevermore. Context. David expresses confidence that life with God is the highest joy. Kaplan interprets this as describing the endless delight experienced by the righteous in the future world. Isaiah 64:4, KJV numbering, Hebrew verse 64:3. For since the beginning of the world men have not heard, nor perceived by the ear, neither hath the eye seen, O God, beside thee, what he hath prepared for him that waiteth for him. Context. Isaiah declares that God's future redemption exceeds anything previously revealed. Rabbinic literature repeatedly cites this verse as proof that the bliss of the world to come cannot be fully described or imagined in this life. Talmudic source. Birakhot 3:4b. All the prophets prophesied only regarding the days of the Messiah, but concerning the world to come, eye has not seen, O God, beside thee. Kaplan is relying on this famous interpretation. Genesis 12:5. And Abram took Sarai his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all their substance that they had gathered, and the souls that they had gotten in Haran, and they went forth to go into the land of Canaan. Context. The plain meaning is that Abraham departed Haran with his household and followers. Rabbinic tradition interprets the souls that they had made as those whom Abraham and Sarah had brought to knowledge of God, while later Kabbalistic literature also uses the plural wording to support the tradition that creating a golem requires multiple participants acting together. Rabbinic and Kabbalistic sources referenced. This passage draws on several classical sources, even where Kaplan does not quote them verbatim. Birakhot 1:7a, the righteous enjoy the radiance of the Shekinah. Birakhot 3:4b, eye has not seen. Shur HaShurim Rabbah 1:4, the king's chambers as heavenly treasuries. Chagiga 1:2a, discussions of the hidden primordial light and the upper heavens. Bereshit Rabbah 3:6, the primordial light hidden away for the righteous. Sanhedrin 6:5b, traditions concerning the creation of a golem, which later Kabbalists connected with the plural expression the souls that they had made in Genesis 12:5. This completes the major Hebrew terminology, conceptual material, biblical quotations, and rabbinic/Kabbalistic references contained in this final excerpt without repeating the foundational terms we've already covered in the earlier sections. This has dealt with pages 249 to 257. This completes the terms for the book.